Welcome to episode 146 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and Apple has a spring-loaded event that is occurring on April 20th, and I had the pleasure to be part of the For Mac Guys Only podcast, and we are going to simulcast that episode here on our feed. And this is with Mike Potter and Chuck Joyner and myself, and we're going to be reacting as Apple announces all the great products that they announced today as we recorded this on April 20th, and it was really exciting. So please enjoy, and here is the show from For Mac Guys Only.
It's For Mac Guys Only, episode number 386 for April 20th, 2021. Reaction time, Apple's spring-loaded event. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. Well, it's spring, and just as reliable as those daffodils and tulips that spring forth from the ground each April, it's time for another Apple event. The spring-loaded Apple event. And this event looks like it's actually going to live up to its name, with rumors not only of an updated iPad Pro featuring a mini LED display, but also its smaller cousin, the iPad Mini 6. Not to mention the red hot and blue and green and gold rumor of a newly redesigned iMac that we've all been anticipating sporting Apple Silicon. Then, of course, are the perpetually rumored, questionably useful, in my opinion, and yet to be found, see what I did there? Apple AirTags. Now, I don't have to say that what I'm most excited about is an all-new iMac, but I'll also go on record up front as saying that I'm going to be incredibly disappointed if it's simply an M1 in iMac clothing. The iMac deserves better treatment than that, so if it's not an M1X, or whatever they're going to call the next generation Apple processor, then it's a non-starter for me. And, quite frankly, hard to recommend when we know something better is coming just around the corner. But, before I open the panel to those thoughts, and I can feel them already percolating in their brains, let's introduce everyone that's joining me today. First up is the host of In Touch with iOS, Mr. Dave, I don't care what Apple announces today, I'm buying it, Ginsburg. Howdy, Dave.
I don't know if I'd go that far. How you doing, Mike? Glad to be here. And I don't know if I'd go that far, but I've already got approval to buy an iPad, so I think I'm getting my Apple Card ready to go for that. So.
Ooh, exciting. And I prepped this one specifically for him, joining Dave in the hot seat, the man always looking on the bright side of Apple and avoiding the shadowy recesses of Microsoft, the host of Mac Voices and producer of MacStock's annual series, The Road to MacStock, Chuck Joyner. Hey, Chuck.
Hello, Mike. Thanks for having me. But the question really I want to ask you, is there anything other than shadowy aspects of Microsoft?
Oh, we'll save that for another episode in the future.
Okay. Darn.
Well, you have both heard my abbreviated thoughts, abbreviated though they may be. And before Mr. Cook takes the stage, which is going to be in, where are we at now? About 6 minutes, 5 minutes and 7 seconds I'm showing in my live stream. What has got everyone excited today?
Well, I think the iPad is exciting. I mean, I'm just hoping that it's something that they are going to release that was a little more exciting than it was last year. I mean, the LiDAR and the camera enhancements were about the only thing that were added last year, and that didn't excite me. So I'm still sporting my 2018 iPad Pro. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, again, like you said, the AirTags are going to be something that's questionable. I mean, they've been talking about it. It seems like forever. I think it's been over 2 years, so I'd like to see that happen. And then, like you said, the Macs, I'd be interesting to see what they do with iMacs. I would hope it's a different processor, because I just don't know if it's going to be a compelling reason to upgrade to that when that's something that's going to be coming out in the future. So,
yeah. So I have to agree with you. I wasn't terribly excited about this event until maybe about 3 days ago. Then some of the rumors about the iMac and things like that started, percolating. And of course, we've seen Apple discontinue some of the iMac models, so we knew something was coming. We just don't know if it's coming today. In fact, I'd say we even know for a fact something is coming. We just don't know if it's coming today. But in terms of the iPad, what would be an exciting development to you?
Well, I think processing speed is going to be probably one of the bigger things I'd like to see. The new LED screen, that's going to probably be something exciting. Not that I'm saying that's 2018. Doesn't already have a pretty amazing screen as it is, but
yeah, it does.
But it's 3 years old now. It's out of warranty. I'm hoping there's going to be something that's going to excite me enough that maybe I could live with this 2018 for probably a little longer. But it'd be interesting. It's definitely interesting to see where it goes.
How about you, Chuck? What of the rumors that have been swirling around, is there anything that's got you excited?
I would go with David. A new iPad would be in my shopping cart, because my iPad is the very first iPad Pro 12 inch. So I haven't had an upgrade for quite some time. And I'm with him, processing. I'm especially anxious though to see if the mini LED rumors are true, and if they live up to their hype. Because I look at my screen now on the iPad and it's like, that's pretty darn good, but there are times I admit that it would be nice to have it just a little brighter, especially in certain outdoor situations. So that would be a big thing. I have never owned an Apple Pencil, but I've had a number of people that have just about gotten me convinced that I really should have one. And so having that be integrated in with whatever the new iPad design, whether it attaches in a new way or charges in a new way, or just the existing way, the current way, would be definitely of interest to me.
I was excited about the Apple Pencil when I got it. I got the first generation Apple Pencil, and I'll have to admit my interactions with it are limited pretty much to, oh, darn, I forgot to charge that thing, and then plugging it in and letting it charge up, and then that's about it. And I see that my live stream is starting as I adjust the volume on that. So that's been about my interaction with the Apple Pencil. I really thought it was going to be much more useful than it's turned out to be. There's certainly some cool use case scenarios. They just haven't fallen into my workflow.
Yeah, I'm not much of an artist. In fact, I'm probably the anti-artist. So I don't sketch, I don't draw. It's just not me. But I am anxious to see if a pencil would change my interaction in any way. I know, again, I've talked. Jeff Gamet is one who explained to me how he uses his Apple Pencil. And it's like beyond sketching, and it's like, yeah, okay, maybe. So. I've got some learning to do, but definitely want to just see what the capabilities are going to be and what it can do.
It's interesting that both of you have picked the iPad Pro as being the thing that excites you. I still have the iPad Pro 10.5 inch. I've had it for several years now, and it still fulfills the function I purchased it for. I have not found myself bringing it into my workflow in a bigger way than keeping notes on it, or being a media consumption device, or what I originally purchased it for, and I still use it for this, controlling the cameras at MacStock. I mean, that was the sole reason to purchase that iPad Pro, and really was the only intention for using it. It has become kind of a daily news consumption or media consumption device. But for the most part, I'm still, for good or bad, I'm still a Mac guy. If I want to be productive, I sit down at the Mac, and I know that's quite different for other folks. I know, Dave, you use your iPad in a productive workflow constantly. Yeah. I guess I'm not that familiar with your workflow, Chuck. Are you using the iPad in a manner other than consumption?
Yes, to a limited extent. Again, it sort of depends on the situation. I will use it for note taking in certain situations, and data entry, and I don't consider email curation or news browsing consumption the way I do it. So it's more almost of a triage device in a lot of cases. But that it becomes useful as yet another screen that I can be doing something like that on.
I was telling you guys just before we started recording that I was using my iPad last night for my notes during a user group presentation. And one thing surprised me, and maybe it's my iPad. It is running the latest version of iOS. But when I gave a presentation a number of weeks ago, no, it wasn't a presentation. When I conducted an interview a number of weeks ago, I opened notes on my Mac, and I could zoom in on those notes so that I could set my Mac at a comfortable distance and still be able to comfortably read my notes. But on the iPad last night, I could not find a function to zoom or increase the size of the text of my notes, and that surprised me.
I have to think about that as to whether there's a workaround or, yeah, I'm not sure. That's I haven't tried that particular setup, so I'm not sure.
And it's interesting because I do touch up my notes. That's not really the right word, but I do update my notes from time to time on the iPad and on the iPhone. But I primarily compose them on the Mac. That's interesting.
But I think that's a great way to look at it, Mike, that, the iPad can be, a lot of people seem to be forcing it into a dedicated device position. But as an ancillary device or an extra device, especially with some of the syncing through iCloud for me for notes and for some of the other Apple apps, it can be a phenomenal enhancement to the Mac. And then it can go with me even easier than a laptop can.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of darn Microsoft, those recent commercials comparing the Surface Pro with the Mac and with the iPad just drive me crazy because they're purposely distorting, as they often do in their commercials. And, let's be fair, Apple distorts things a little bit too when they do their comparisons, but they're purposely distorting the whole purpose of the iPad and the Mac in the Apple ecosystem. And when you do take, when you take full advantage of that ecosystem, you learn where each product is supposed to fit in your daily productive life. And that's what they're completely glossing over. So I don't know if Dave is saying to what Mr. Cook is presenting, or
I'm saying it to you. Because I'm listening intently with
saying
you.
it to my comments. But the event has started.
Yes.
We are watching Mr. Cook traverse the sidewalks of Apple's campus, talking about the podcast app. I actually see him talking about the podcast app right now. He was talking about Apple Card. Did anyone catch what he was saying there, or was that just kind of a...
What they announced was Apple Card Family. What's going to allow you to do is be able to share the same Apple Card with your spouse, and also have capabilities of spending limits for kids as well. So it looks like they're finally, and that's great because I have an Apple Card and my wife has an Apple Card. We never could share it, so now we have some potential that, and any families could now share that card and build your credit together as opposed to having separate accounts. So. And I think more of the focus was the spending limits for kids, allowing the kids to have access to the card, but be able to limit it.
It would be interesting if you can limit where the kids can spend versus how much they could spend. That would be an interesting feature.
Yeah, they didn't get into too much detail on that, but I would not be at all surprised.
There's been a lot of commentary about these Apple events and the fact that, since the pandemic has started, everything is pre-recorded and very nicely packaged. I'm digging this. I like how they're doing these presentations, and I kind of hope they keep going. Even if they have a live audience, I kind of hope they keep doing this sort of thing in the future.
Now, they just announced the Apple Podcast subscription. Right. But virtually no information other than saying each podcast will have a beautiful new page. There'll be an update to the podcast app, and that they will be listeners will be able to help podcast creators fuel their passion and build their business. So exactly what that means, I don't know, but it was just that much, and boom, we're on to a purple iPhone.
I love this purple iPhone. This
new
is
colors.
Really awesome. That may be the thing that gets me to jump to the next iPhone. As superficial as that sounds, I do like that purple. That's really nice.
And they're singing a song that you can get every color in you.
Well, what's interesting is they're talking about it as the iPhone 12.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the next iPhone.
Yeah, it is.
So that's that. Would this be the first time, other than Product Red, that they've announced a color change or color addition midstream?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It does seem like it, doesn't it? But I am wondering if they haven't done this before, introduced a color midstream. Certainly they've done it with the iPod. I don't remember if they've done it with the iPhone. That's a good question.
Yeah, I kind of think Product Red was that way, but I don't recall any other color. But I'm not one that really worries too much about that, because I put a case on my phone anyway, so I can make my phone any color I want.
Right. As many of us already have cases on our iPhones as it is. So
they're talking about Find My right now, which with a very interesting video.
The guy disappearing into the sofa.
Yeah.
Looking for his keys, I presume.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that. It's nearby. It's close.
There it is. There it is. There's an AirTag.
There it is. The AirTag. Finally.
Listen to Dave get giddy.
Yep.
Finally. They've been only talking about this for 2 years.
Ooh, you can customize your AirTag.
Ooh, put a little icon on it. There already comments, AirTags, can't believe this didn't already leak. It's only leaked for 2 years.
I guess we should comment on how this is working. We're watching the live stream. Dave, you're watching it on the Apple TV. Chuck, you're watching it through the web browser, and I'm watching it via YouTube. I'm also following a couple live blogs in the tradition of For Mac Guys Only's Reaction Time episodes. I happen to have Tom's Guide open, Ars Technica, and Tech Radar are the three that I've opened up. I tend to gravitate towards the text-only live blogs versus the, follow them on Twitter, that sort of thing. But those are the three live blogs I have open in addition to the live stream coming over YouTube. Are either of you following live blogs as well, or are you strictly watching Apple's live stream?
I've got TweetDeck set up, and I've got all the feeds flashing before my eyes here.
Nice.
And I'm just watching just this. I want to concentrate on it. And I think it's important to note here that they just talked about the privacy aspects of AirTags, which they say are industry firsts. And that may be the big differentiator, or a big differentiator. Because if you think about it, you're tagging important things. The last thing I want to do is help somebody else find my device or what I value, as opposed to me. So,
has that been a problem with Tile and some of the other tag type services? Have there been privacy violations as people use these things in the wild?
Mike, not that I remember seeing, I have to admit, but at the same time, it makes perfect sense that it would be a concern, and especially if something like an Apple-backed device would become widespread. That sooner or later somebody's going to say, hey, we figured out a way to crack into this. So I don't know. I don't know.
Going along with the U1 chip for location, that it's also secure, I think is going to add to the enhancement to the security and them opening up the Find My network to third-party devices is really, they've put some really strong security in place.
I think that's where the security becomes a concern is once they've opened it up to the third-party services, we need to trust that they're going to do what they have to do to provide secure communications. But if Apple is there kind of overseeing the whole thing and ensuring that happens, that's the big benefit.
Yeah.
So they did give the pricing for the Apple tags. It's going to be $99 for a 4-pack, and it's going to be able to be pre-ordered this coming Friday.
That's not horrible. That's not horrible at all.
No.
I think that's on my list.
Gee, what a surprise.
Yeah. I mean, now they're talking about Apple TV.
So we're going to go back to that "I don't care what Apple announces today, I'm buying it" comment I made earlier. So far, we know he's buying the AirTags. He's ready to sign up for that iPad Pro. I think you just need to buy one of those new iMacs too, Dave, and you've got the trifecta.
I'm good on my M1 Mac Mini, thanks.
That really is an awesome device.
Yeah.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't have the iMac yet, at least not as we record this.
No, we don't.
No.
It's interesting how many of these images that we're seeing come out of the presentation were the leaked images we had seen. Most notably, the tag holders that I'm seeing here. The customization is new. I like that a lot. And I could see corporate partnerships coming into play here.
It'll be very interesting to see what the options are, how you do that, if you do that at ordering or if there's something after the fact. Judging by what they showed, it looks like it would almost have to be done at the time of ordering. Yeah,
it does look laser etched, doesn't it?
Yeah. Or embossed or something under a clear coat. Yeah,
it's not like custom M&Ms where you just dump them into a bin and your picture gets spit out onto them. This looks like it's actually I would say it's laser. Kind of like what they did with the iPods or the iPhones when you get those custom engraved. I'm guessing it's like that.
Well, they wrapped the Apple TV Plus portion of it by showing a trailer for the new season of Ted Lasso. It looks really good. I can't wait to watch it. And that's supposed to be out in July 23rd.
For as long as we've been anticipating the AirTags, they sure didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, did they?
They didn't. No.
We know they're customizing it. We know it's going to work with the Find My app. They gave a little demo of how that Find My app might work, but that's about it.
Well, okay, so we're by my clock, we're 15 minutes in. We're now talking about the Apple TV 4K. So we've got that. We've got AirTags. We have the podcast subscription service and a purple iPhone 12. So we've got 4 announcements within 15 minutes.
And now they're at the Apple TV.
Right.
And I've got my feedback. My feed went out just around the time the guy was diving into the sofa for the the keys, the set of keys.
Well, with the Apple TV, where they just mentioned it's going to be an Apple TV 4K, it's going to have the A12 Bionic CPU in it. It's a lot of processing power, higher frame rates, HDR, Dolby Vision.
It's interesting because the Apple TV was on the rumor list of least likely to be announced.
Yeah.
Almost every one of the rumor blogs I was following, they all said, yeah, they're talking about an Apple TV, but don't count on it. That's not going to come. And yet here we are, as Chuck said, about 15 minutes in, and we're already up to a 5th generation Apple TV. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This would be 6th generation, wouldn't it?
I think
or are they even referring to it as that?
Probably not.
Now, this is really interesting. They're just showing how with the new Apple TV, you'll be able to pair it with your iPhone and then use that to calibrate the Apple TV to take care of any issues or discrepancies in whatever TV screen you're using.
Yeah, it's called color balance.
That's very cool.
They're really cool. And now we've got a new remote.
Oh my
yes. Hey, it's a dial. It's just a dial instead of a whole touch pad like the current one. Circular gesture. Oh my God! Finally. How much of a pain it is to scroll between when you want to go forward or backward using that remote? The current one.
Huh. So it sounds like they've really been listening and paying attention.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of styled like an iPad with the square off the remote.
Well, listening, paying attention, and actually looking at and absorbing what worked historically. as Dave just indicated, does look a heck of a lot like the original iPod. In fact, I'd even say it looks a lot like the iPod Video, with the touch scroll wheel on it. But that works. It worked really, really well. And then it got abandoned. And so to see it brought back in a remote where that type of functionality is, as you both indicated, critically needed, it's nice to see them going back and pulling forward some of those things that they've discarded in the past.
Well, it feels like they've been paying attention, and that we're not hearing quite as much about, oh my God, this is such fantastic design. We're hearing more about what it does. And I keep feeling like there's a Johnny Ive factor missing here that may be, unfortunately, a good thing.
It's a good thing.
I take nothing away from Mr. Ive and what he's done for Apple, but
I agree. I agree 100%. I take nothing away from what he's done for Apple, but towards the end of his tenure, things did start to go a little to the extreme.
Well, I might add to that, Mike, to the extreme as to the point that design became more important than function.
Yes.
Because the designs were beautiful, there's no doubt about it. But it's like building a house that's a showplace, but you can't live in it. It looks great in home and garden, but who wants to live there?
Yeah, functionality should always be king for these type of devices, and it did unfortunately take a back seat to the design. You're right, absolutely beautiful, but we need it to be functional as well.
So now we're into the M1s.
The Mac.
The Mac, yeah. And they're talking about the M1. So we all go quiet, listening very carefully to what's going to be said here.
Well, I've noticed as you were commenting about the design, Chuck, that you went quiet as soon as those Macs showed up on screen.
Well, they were you're talking about what usually forward the M1 is. So I'm wondering.
I feel as if they're leading up to a next generation processor here.
They're talking about apps right now.
Yeah. It's either that or they're really promoting the capability as the M1.
Which is not to be diminished. But I do, as I said at the beginning, I do feel like the iMac deserves more than that. The MacBook Air, sure. The Mac Mini, absolutely. The iMac, no. It needs the next generation processor.
Dramatic tones.
Dramatic tones.
This is an iMac, an M1 iMac.
Whoa.
See, and the thing that gets me, if it's an M1 iMac, the thing that gets me about that is that we know there's going to be another generation processor coming. We know it. So why buy an M1 iMac, which is a long-term device? It's not a short-term device. It's not a throwaway device. This is a device that sits on people's desks for years. So we know a new one's coming, a new processor's coming. Why buy this first generation iMac?
And I would say that given the power that we've seen already, just in the laptops and the Mac Mini, with the old form factors, hopefully we'll hear more along the lines here.
Mm-hmm.
Throw all that out. I just said there's one in purple.
There's at least 6-7 colors I'm seeing here.
Now, I have the volume turned down. If they are not playing the same music that they played when they spun the original iMac around in circles, showing off all the colors, that's a disappointment. And yellow, look, that sold my wife on it. So we'll have a purple one and yellow one by the end of the year, I'm sure.
There's 6 different colors, looks like. Okay, giving a little comparison of all the iMacs.
Now, where they can upgrade this, they can put more cores in it. They can throw more cores at the processing, put more memory in it. If I recall, though, the M1 was limited to 16 gig.
Yeah, now they're talking about the internals and why the M1 is so superior. Oh my God, the logic board is pathetically small.
It's all on a chip. Wow, look at that. It's tiny. There's still fans, though. And they did spout that it's only 10 decibels.
Wait a minute. Did they just show removable memory in this
No, it was just kind
No.
of, it was a
Okay.
transition that went into the chip.
I see.
Yeah.
I see what they're doing. Yep. That would be a stunner.
Interesting that the frame of the screen is white, and the color, whatever color choice, is going to be across the chin.
Sides and the back, yeah.
24-inch. 4480 by 2560, I think it said, for resolution.
You know, the design of the previous generation iMac was not horrible. You know, it introduced in 2012, and it certainly stood the test of time. But where it was really starting to show its age was in the 21.5-inch screen. That, while that might have been a standard, 22 to 24-inch in 2012, you have to have 24-inch these days.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the cameras.
Back to the lab.
Okay,
Anyone
1080p
else?
camera.
Anyone else noticing the Apple logo is missing from the chin?
Yes.
Interesting. Yes, I hadn't thought about it.
It's on the back.
And they've always had it there, but it's missing. It's missing from the front. I see the headphone jack on the side.
Yeah, we definitely have not seen the ports yet. Other than that, Mike, I'm with you. That did look like that looks to be on the left side. Interesting choice.
If you're facing the screen, it was on the left side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if this were a live audience showing a 1080p HD camera, the audience would be in an uproar.
And we could say this is miracle of miracles, to jump to 1080p for the first time on a Mac. And they just said it, best camera ever in a Mac.
Okay, I'm seeing 4 ports on the back of an orange iMac.
Yeah, I see that.
This is what it looked like. So is that going to mimic the MacBook Pro's 4 Thunderbolt ports?
Well, that would be disappointing. I would hope that they would mimic what they're doing with the Mac Mini versus a MacBook Pro.
Oh, but that's what I was saying before, Mike. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what options they give us, because I felt like the Mac Mini, they dropped the M1 chip in, they did what they needed to do, and then pushed it out the door, and it was a huge hit. Mm-hmm. But they really didn't re-engineer much else. Now they're talking here about just how everything is so much better. 6-speaker system.
Yeah, speakers and microphones they've enhanced. Spatial audio, supporting with that Dolby Atmos.
The downward firing speakers has always been one of the huge benefits of the iMac that I think has gone unrecognized by most of its users. You don't realize what a benefit it is to have those downward facing speakers and how much it enriches the sound when you're, bouncing that sound off of a hard surface like your desk. And it looks like they've continued that with the new model.
They're bouncing back and forth between all the colors. I like that because it gives you a sense of exactly what they look like.
Yeah, this screen, from what we're seeing so far, looks pretty amazing.
You know what I love about the colors is how rich they are.
Yep.
The recent generation iPhones, they've been pale colors, nice looking, but pale colors. These are rich and vibrant. Even the purple iPhone they showed earlier, it's a much paler version of purple than what we're seeing on this iMac.
I want to see the colors in person, but I find it interesting that from what I've seen so far, nothing jumps out of me as like a default business color.
Yeah. Oh, there was the silver. They do have the
silver. Was it a silver?
Yep.
There was.
Yeah, okay, if there was silver, good.
No space gray. I didn't see a space gray anyway.
Well, I said it's space gray. It's just hard to see.
Mm.
Well, that's it. I couldn't tell.
Good point,
David. What it was.
Yeah, I'm just looking on the feed here. Let's see what they got.
Wow.
It almost looks like a silver. The Verge just had a screen capture of the picture of the colors.
I have to admit that seafoam green is really a pretty color.
Yeah, the orange and the yellow and the red, purple and the blue.
Yeah, no, that's pink.
Or is that pink? Okay. Or almost rose gold.
Yeah, could be, David. Could be.
And looking at these images again, I went in and found the image that you were looking at, Dave. Looking at them, it almost appears as if the color is richer around the edge of the computer the sides, and the back and the stand are a lighter version of it.
Yeah.
Varying shades of color. I agree with you, Chuck, though. The white around the bezel is an interesting choice.
Okay, 2 Thunderbolt ports, 2 USB-C ports,
Right.
and a new power connector.
6K. Oh, about time. Just nice, easy connector. Wow, that might be proprietary.
Oh,
Interesting.
Ethernet port in the, yeah.
Yeah, put it into the power pack.
Okay, well, that's good. So you do have hardwired connectivity without having to necessarily add a dock or an adapter.
And they're different choice keyboards.
Yeah, and the keyboards match the color.
Touch ID on the keyboard.
On a wireless keyboard.
Wow. That's awesome.
Mm.
And you can even do to change profiles at a touch. Same old Magic Mouse.
But Magic Mouse and Magic Trackpad, but with colors, with matching colors.
Yeah. Huh. They still haven't mentioned how much memory you can get.
Yeah, not so far. But you also haven't seen anywhere that you're going to be able to upgrade.
I doubt
you won't be able to.
You have to buy it.
You're going to be locked into what you purchase here.
Right.
I do like seeing the full size keyboard though.
Hype up the M1.
It will be very interesting to see just how the audio performance and the camera performance measure up.
Yeah.
Because they're certainly setting high expectations.
One of the things that was interesting that I saw go by is not only is it a 3-way mic, but it is going to use beamforming that will help it, similar to, Wi-Fi beamforming, it's going to help it ignore some of that background noise a little bit better and allow it to focus on your voice versus just kind of general room noise. So that's a nice feature of it. The camera, the camera's a camera. It should hold up pretty well. As long as you use a decent sensor in there, I can't imagine that it would be a poor performer. And we know Apple has great experience with camera sensors.
Yeah.
I thought I saw it say that Face ID was going to be part of this. Did you see that as well, or?
No. So you have 8 gigs of RAM. April 30th.
As far as the sound is concerned, 2 pairs of woofers, higher powered, and a high-performance tweeter. So 6 stereo speakers, coupled with Dolby Atmos, as you said, Dave. $12.99. Whoa, how much memory is that? 8 core.
Only 8 gigs?
8 gig of memory, 256 gig SSD.
So I can't help but mention the fact that it's 24-inch iMac, as opposed to the 27 inches that we have right now.
Well, this is to replace the 21.5-inch.
Right.
So perhaps the 27 or larger that has been rumored is being held back for when there is an upgraded processor.
And that's what makes me think that what you're seeing here is a consumer level, if you will, iMac, or a consumer-oriented iMac, especially with the colors and all of that.
I think you're right.
This is aimed towards consumer market because it's replacing the 21.5-inch model, but it's giving it a little bit better sweet spot with the 24-inch size screen. So this is definitely not aimed towards any pros.
Spec-wise, it blows the doors off their entry-level iMac from before.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what they're doing. They're doing baby steps into this. They want to keep the line going. And I'm sure this summer we'll probably start seeing the newer processors in the high-end Mac and higher-end MacBook Pros.
I think with that in mind, I'm much more comfortable with the M1 in the iMac, in the 24-inch iMac, knowing that a higher-end 24-inch iMac and a higher-end larger screen, which we've seen rumored being larger than 27-inch, but in a similar form factor, will be sporting something newer in Apple Silicon.
Oh, my goodness. Did I just see what I think I saw?
You did.
The guy cutting a hole in the
taking the chip
campus
out.
window?
Nope. The M1 in an iPad.
Oh, yes, you did. I just missed that. You are correct. Oh, boy.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting turn of developments.
It sure is. Oh boy.
Now, show that iPad running Mac OS. I thought the guy was taking his head off. Just a wig. Just a wig.
Yeah, here we go. We're all silent because we're paying attention to this one.
Well, I was just thinking, in light of these Microsoft commercials showing the Surface Pro versus the iPad versus the Mac, can you imagine Apple blowing the doors off that argument by introducing a new iPad Pro that can not only run iOS but Mac OS?
50% performance increase over the last generation iPad Pro.
Wow.
Little mention of Affinity Designer there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adobe.
And LumaFusion too. 40% faster graphics.
Yep.
There has to be there has to be a reason behind this.
Well, this makes this an even more compelling business machine. You've got a mouse, you've got a keyboard that you have the options, and Apple provided solutions, and depending on what you consider business software. I mean, Office is there if you are bent that way, but you also have all the Apple software, and we all know that more and more things are moving to the mobile devices. So this represents a no compromise option for developers.
Maybe for developers, but you mentioned, and I know it was in jest, sorry Adobe, when they showed Affinity, but imagine the full desktop version of Affinity, Photo, Designer, Publisher, and the full desktop versions of Adobe's Creative Suite running on something like this. Now you're talking no compromises.
Well, to be fair, they did in the next couple seconds. They showed a demo of Adobe Frescoes, so Adobe did get a mention. Yeah. I mean, I see your point, and I'm not an Adobe user. Excuse me, at this point, so I don't know how much the compromise is for the iPad version. But right now, it would seem like now Adobe has no reason not to implement everything it can, just maybe with a different interface.
Right. The two more announcements. So you got the Thunderbolt 4 now on the iPad Pro, and up to 2 terabytes of storage you can get on the iPad Pro, and 5G on the cellular.
So what I'm seeing is this is a no compromise iPad. Now the price is going to be really interesting.
That's right. You just read my mind.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's going to be up to you as to how much you want to load it.
Right.
I didn't have the volume on. Did you see what they were just showing with the iPad being the interface to what appeared to be the new iMac?
No, I didn't see that.
No. I didn't interpret whatever I saw that way.
There's a tripod you can get there, Chuck.
Yep.
Enhanced camera.
Well, certainly for someone fully invested, I should say, in the iOS or iPad ecosystem, this is the iPad to get. And it is, as you said, Chuck, it's the no compromise device.
Right.
This is where you want to be if the iPad is at the center of your ecosystem, for sure.
This is it. They're really, for content creators, they're really pushing this.
They're giving an awful lot of people speaking time in this.
I like, too, that they're giving, in addition to giving a lot of people that speaking time, I like that they're giving a lot of attention to the third-party developers as well. This isn't strictly a love fest for Apple software running on Apple hardware. This is showing everything that you're capable of doing using the third-party apps that are out there.
Yeah. We have an ultra-wide camera.
Yep. So it's probably similar to what the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max has. Center stage.
If that works half as good, this center stage, if that works half as good as it's the demo here, that's...
Yeah, because they're moving around, and it's like the cameraman.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's game changing. Oh, my credit card's going to get work out.
What? Let me ask you, what are they showing here with Center Stage?
They said it's an ultra wide camera, and so everything is in software, and it's all being done intelligently. So in other words, your camera is only giving you part of the range, but it shifts if you move. Obviously, there are limits, but you move a little too much right or left out of Center Stage, and it adapts.
Yeah,
which is
that's clever. That's very clever.
That's really clever.
It's like live cropping.
Yeah,
with a focus on the subject. That's pretty cool. As someone who primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, but as someone who primarily uses the iPad when you're out doing interviews at conferences and things like that, this is the game-changing moment for you, seeing things like Center Stage.
That very well could be, Mike. I'm thinking about my own use case, but in that environment, I would be very interested to see how it identifies, because it just said if other people come into the camera range, that it recognizes them too. Well, if you have people milling around all over the place, how's it going to handle that, or is it going to get confused? So it could be a blessing, it could be a curse. But you're right, that is always a problem of trying to keep people in frame.
Well, they just announced with the display they're going to emulate what the XDR display does, and Liquid Retina XDR. Bring your 12.9-inch iPad Pro to what you have on that screen.
I wish they'd stop announcing things because I'm scared of the price.
Me too. I can imagine what the 12.9 is going to be.
Dave, you're a no compromise kind of guy. So they're going to announce this iPad, the pricing, I should say. They're going to announce the pricing of this iPad, and you're going to see the different levels. Will you naturally go to the highest level of storage that's available, or are you going to look at those different levels and see what's actually most appropriate for your use?
My use of the space, I've always been, the sweet spot's been 256, and really that's where I would work. I mean, don't get me wrong, Mike, I still use my Mac quite a bit as well, so I'm going both platforms, but I would probably lean more towards a middle of the road space, because I know that the storage is just going to be astronomical as far as cost.
The thing is, though, if you are going to be a creative, especially with the camera,
right,
you've got to consider that, because that for me has always been a challenge. Go out into the CES show floor for a day of shooting, and if you don't have adequate memory, you can actually run out of memory without too much trouble.
Right. And
so that, plus the fact that you want to keep some movies on there, and all of those things for the plane rides. Please don't ask me that question, Mike. I don't want to answer
it. Well, I ask you, Chuck. No, I won't ask you that question. 256 has been a perfect sweet spot for me on the phone. I was just considering the ideal iPhone for my mother-in-law, and the topic of storage came up. And I realized that she really doesn't need that much storage, that something like 64 gig would be more than enough. I think she's coming from a phone with 8 or 16 gig on it, so even 32 would be more than enough for her. But I realized I really can't go down to much less than 256 in the future for myself. I thought I was, as we always do when we buy storage, I thought I was buying more storage than I would ever need. And it's true, I've not filled it up, but I can't imagine having less. I like the idea that I don't have to worry about it. And that goes to what you were saying, Chuck. When you're out in the field and you're shooting video, you don't want to have to worry that you're going to run out of that storage space when you do what you do.
Yeah.
This is a tight presentation. We're 50 minutes into it. With everything we've seen so far, any one item, now they're spending a lot of time on the iPad Pro, but any one item could be a half hour in and of itself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we might be wrapping up in an hour.
I don't think there's any question, Mike. I can't imagine what they would do that would top this. I think this is the top end.
Mm-hmm. They saved the best for last.
No mention of a new Apple Pencil. I wonder if that'll be a throwaway announcement.
Oh. Or one more thing.
It's great to see Terry Morgan on there get a mention.
Did you interviewed her?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Several times, David. She's LumaFusion.
Right. It just shows Apple really recognizes the accomplishments that LumaFusion really has done with iOS.
Okay, how much more money are they going to soak me for?
There we go. A pencil. Good. It's still going to continue to support the Folio. I don't have to buy a new one. I'm an 11-inch screen. I won't go. I wouldn't go with the 12.8.
Oh, come on. Go big or go home, David.
Yeah, well.
You started with a 13-inch, Dave, didn't you?
Well, when MacStock first started, yeah, when I still have that first gen iPad Pro 12.9 inch. Remember, I had both, and I sold that other one. That I have not bought the 12.9 since.
Yeah, it didn't take you long before you went down to that 11-inch or 10.5-inch, and that's pretty much where you stayed ever since.
Yeah, I've been 11. Yeah, $7.99. It's base price.
Yeah, but they don't tell you what the.
But how about space though? Yeah,
they don't tell you what the configurations are.
Yeah.
So order April 30th, and it arrives in May.
I mean, but as far as the dimensions go, it looks pretty similar. So maybe some of these cases may still continue to. Well, maybe not because of the camera.
They do such a great job of making you want it because they're showing you what you can do with it.
Well, so I guess the pencil stays.
Sweet.
That's good price points.
Yeah.
$7.99, $10.99.
That's about where they have been with the iPads.
Now, they didn't, you're right, they didn't say what that includes. Are you going to wager on 32 gig or 64 gig as the starting point?
Oh, got to be 64. With the camera?
With the camera and Pro moniker?
He even mentions you can get up to 16 gigs of memory on it. I've never seen them mention that before.
Yeah, I saw that too, David. I was sort of paging through my memory. It's like, I don't think we've had that before.
Oh, yeah, they mentioned the Mini.
Yeah, good point, David. This was all about the Pro.
Because there were rumors about the Mini, potentially, unless they do it after the fact.
Yep, we're going to wrap.
Yep. Now we're all going to go fish for all the information when they just skimmed over with the podcasts app and the Apple Card.
Just doing the rundown now.
Yeah.
So spring loaded meant loaded as in number of announcements.
Yeah. That was pretty product heavy.
That makes you want to wonder, look forward to seeing you again soon. How soon with what?
Yeah. And like you said, Mike, right at an hour.
We are wrapping up right at an hour here.
Yeah. David, I think we should start a petition that makes the purple. We should have them call the purple iPhone the Mike Potter model.
Yeah, there you go. That's right.
Without question, that's the color I would purchase if I were buying a new iPhone right now. But, I have to be honest. I'm not going to buy one right now. It's April. iPhones typically get introduced in the fall. If I'm going to be buying a new iPhone, I'm certainly not going to be buying one now. And I just have to hope that the next model's going to have that purple as well. But it certainly is gorgeous.
Which takes me back to this is April. Other than the spring theme thing, why would you introduce a new color now when I agree with you, Mike? Unless it's somebody that just their phone breaks or they have some compelling reason to buy a phone right now, or are we just too steeped in the idea of the annual upgrade cycle and we're missing it? That people are going to say, "Oh, I need a phone," or I want a purple iPhone and I've been looking for a reason to upgrade, and that's going to be my reason.
Here's why. They introduced the purple one because they can. They had these other colors for the iPhone. They didn't have purple. They introduced an entire new line of colors for the iMac that included purple to fall within that spectrum, the rainbow spectrum of colors. Why not roll it out to the iPhone? Why not give people a compelling reason to go out and get one if they just absolutely have to have that color? Why not? So, if they have the technology to do it, if they have the technology to roll out purple for the iPhone, why not? So the short answer again is because they can. And I think that's the main reason they did it.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not disputing it. I just think it's a really interesting move. That was fun. Let's do that again.
And how much different will the iPhone 13 be anyway? As I mentioned a moment ago, helping my mother-in-law pick out a new iPhone, I'm looking at the XR, I'm looking at the 11, I'm looking at the 12, and if I'm being honest, the sweet spot's the 11. So when the 13 comes out, or whatever they call it, maybe they won't call it the 13. Like there aren't 13th floors in office buildings. Maybe it won't be the iPhone 13. But when the new model comes out this fall, the 12 will still be around. And it will still be a good purchase. For people who have to have the latest, it won't be a great purchase. But for most people, it'll still be a really, really good purchase. So as you both have said, this absolutely was a spring-loaded event. Loaded with new hardware. We didn't see an iPad mini. We didn't see new AirPods. But we did see an Apple TV. And a lot of folks said, yeah, that's rumored, but we're not seeing it being announced today. And yet there it was. We saw the AirTags, finally, as Dave said. Saw the AirTags, 2 years of rumors. They were finally released. Couple little surprises with the AirTags, things that we didn't know before, like the engraving. So I'm going to ask you both the same question I asked you at the beginning. And granted, we still need to dig into the specs of these devices a little bit more. But if money were no object, what are you purchasing that Apple announced today?
Well, as I said, I'm an 11-inch iPad Pro guy, so I would probably stick with that as far as that goes. They've already posted the pricing on here. Actually, that I'm looking at here. So, $128 is the base storage. That's pretty fair for the iPad. And
that's amazing.
$250. Yeah. So $799 is the base price for the 11-inch, and it's the $128. So then $256 and everything increments up to $100. But the 2 terabyte, $1899. So you really are obviously have to be a pretty intense person to need that type of surge. But going back to what you asked is, I think like I said, I'm an 11-inch guy with iPad, so that's definitely my sweet spot to what I like. Because I am, as much as I have been using my iPad, I kind of, my workflow goes between the Mac and the iPad, quite a bit. So I think I like the iPad in the sense of having it as an additional device for that. I'll definitely be buying some more AirTags. Looking at that, I'm not in the market for an iMac right now, so I won't be looking at that at this time. So, and I have a 2019 MacBook Pro that I use as well as my M1 Mac Mini. So I think I'm pretty solid on Macs for a while here. But yeah, I think that's where I'm going to probably be going is looking at the 11-inch iPad Pro.
And how about you, Chuck? With as much video editing as you do, to my knowledge, you've not purchased into the new Apple Silicon Macs yet, or have you?
Yes, I have one of the MacBook Pros. Or MacBook Airs, excuse me, one of the MacBook Airs, yes.
And MacBook Airs, it's a nice device, isn't it? So you went with
it's a super device.
8 gig of memory on that, or did you go 16?
No, I went 8. I went 8.
And that was a decision process that we went through as well, and also went with 8. And I don't regret that.
No, I don't either. I do regret a little bit the fact that I didn't buy a little more storage space. That probably was a mistake. But I've I really bought that as if anything, almost a tertiary machine, because I wanted to see what all the talk was with the M1.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's turned out to be so much better than anyone had predicted. So, but looking at I have to say, I don't think the iMac, this iMac makes sense for me for any reason. I mean, don't misunderstand, it's a nice machine, but I don't think it fits my use case. So I think I'll be waiting on that. The iPad Pro, the iPad Pro though is another story. I'm sitting here clicking pricing and looking at this, trying to figure out. So, $17.99 for a 1 terabyte, or $21.99 for a 2 terabyte machine.
That's the 12.9 inch.
That's the 12. Oh yes, excuse me. Yes, I'm definitely a 12.9 guy. No question about it. So yeah, that's the $21.99 is a little hard to swallow, but
yeah, it's tough.
The 1 terabyte. I mean, that's a lot of storage. Especially if you've been used to 256, that's 4 times the storage.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's a lot of storage, and if you offload your footage and video takes a lot of space. If you offload your footage as you're done with it and get it to your primary editing device, which I assume is not your iPad, your primary editing device is your Mac, correct?
Yeah, but see, that's kind of the problem, because I've been playing with LumaFusion,
mm-hmm.
and admittedly, it's been a bit hampered because mainly hampered because of storage space on my iPad, the existing iPad Pro. Mm-hmm. So this could be a whole different animal here. If there could theoretically be a lot easier, more iPad Pro editing, because the tools are there. And now, what did I say earlier? This is a no compromises machine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is going to be fun. There's no question about it. I mean, any way you take it, this is going to be a device that you buy into now and keep for quite a while.
For sure. I went 3 years on the 2018 iPad Pro, so I could see myself going 3-4 years on the next one.
Right, and I've gone longer than that, David. And so, and admittedly, I've started recently, well, within the last year probably, I've started to find compromises that, they were compromises. They're usage compromises because of the storage and because of, things maybe not being quite where the state of the art is and state of the apps are. So this would definitely put you out in front of that for quite some time.
Yeah.
And now if we switch over to the iMac, which I just pulled up on screen here, there's a couple surprises here that I don't think Apple made clear as they're introducing the new device, which is, to be fair, they're not going to be covering all these different options. But it's interesting to note that the $12.99 model that they showcased on screen pricing-wise does not include all the different colors, does not include the 8-core GPU, so it's the same treatment as they did with the MacBook Air, and does not include the 2 USB 3 ports, nor does it include gigabit Ethernet.
It's only 2.
It's only 2 Thunderbolt USB 4 ports, the Magic Keyboard, and no Touch ID. So there are some compromises there with this entry-level iMac. It's not until we get to the $14.99 model, which, look, that's still a good price. $14.99 for 256 gig of storage, 8 gig of memory, and then the 4 ports, gigabit Ethernet, and Touch ID. And then we look even at the higher end, 512 gig of storage, 8 gig of memory, and all the rest, $16.99. So you're adding $200, which is common with Apple, adding $200, get the full range of colors and 512 gig of storage. What I cannot do, and what I cannot seem to do, is select it and see what other options there are for upgrading it.
Yeah.
Can I go to a terabyte? Can I go to 2 terabytes? Can I go to 16 gig of memory? What can I do with this iMac? I presume if I could go to 16 gig that we'd be talking about $18.99 and likewise another 200 or so bucks to go to a terabyte. But I sure would like to see that. And that's just not an option yet. To your question earlier, though, Chuck, yes, you can get silver. So,
yeah, I see that now. It's an interesting approach, because think about the number of SKUs that they've added with all those colors in 3 different models. So it's not exactly a surprise to me that, I recognize the cases are going to all be the same. It's just the internals, but yeah, that's a lot of potential stock to have for a retailer, for any of the retailers, including the Apple stores.
Yeah.
And to be fair, too, the bottom line, or excuse me, the bottom model has always been a capable model, but always has represented some compromises. It's there so that you can say we're at $12.99. You really want to start seriously looking at the $14.99, unless you are just a rank bottom of the barrel user.
Yeah, and from what we've seen of the M1, it would be a very capable machine.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I know this is a tricky statement for some folks, but for only $200 more, it just does not make sense to go with that entry-level model.
Or if you put $200 to a dock, you could add not only more ports, but a lot of other connectivity as well, which I know is not the Apple way. But just looking at, if I were going to buy this, do I really need more than 2 absolute direct connect USB ports?
Good point. Actually, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Even if you bought the bottom line, you still have an expansion capability that does not break the bank.
Yeah.
But so then the only thing you really are missing is the Touch ID. And it could be that you could purchase the keyboard separately and get that. We just don't know. It's not, at least right at this moment, I can't click through and do any kind of customization on this. So, nor can I add it to the cart.
Well, no, they said that you could. What, I forget when they say, April 30th on this. Yeah, April 30th.
April 30th, right?
And so I think it may be April 30th when we can find out what kind of customization we can do with it. But for all I'm hearing about the M1 and how amazing it is for tasks like video editing. Oh, actually, here's tech specs. So I can click on that. How amazing it is for video editing. It still is a compelling machine for that. And yet, again, I go back to what I said earlier. I know something better is coming. I know another generation Apple M1, M1X, M2 is coming. And you could say that about any new model of Mac, but we know that this is that first generation. We know that Apple always iterates very rapidly when it comes to the second generation. So it's hard for me to want to pull the trigger on this when I know that I'm going to need or want more than this, and that more is coming in 6 months or 9 months or even 12 months. I can wait 12 months if I know that something is coming that will give me the life that I expect from a Mac. But clicking through on the specs, I see that you can get up to 16 gig of unified memory and up to 2 terabytes of storage. So that should be enough for most folks, especially now knowing what we know about the M1 and its efficiency in utilizing that unified memory.
Yeah, that's pretty standard on all the M1 Macs now. 16 is the max on memory.
That's the max on the M1, yeah.
Yeah, so I went with 8, and I've been perfectly happy with it.
They're saying the next generation will be able to address more memory. And until that next generation comes, so it's interesting that they've discontinued the iMac Pro. It's interesting that they're discontinuing some of the other models of iMac when we haven't seen a substitute for it yet, unless Apple feels like this 24-inch slots in very nicely between the 27 and 22. And
seems like it.
This is just going to fulfill that niche until they're ready with the next generation processor. That could be what they're doing.
Yep. Well, or my theory has been that the iMac Pro would go away, because you already saw plenty of articles saying that the Mac Mini with the M1 was outpacing the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
or the iMac Pro, excuse me, the iMac Pro. So I'm not sure you will see an actual replacement for an iMac Pro. I think you probably will see the 27-inch be iterated into that slot with because there's a lot of power with this iMac. And so, what will they do with that, with the 27-inch replacement? And then there's still the actual Mac Pro sitting out there that they'll turn into a real beast of a machine.
Yeah.
That's my long-term wish is to see what they're going to do with the Mac Pro, or Mac Mini Pro, or, whatever that next generation desktop Mac will be sporting Apple Silicon. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I feel like if I'm not necessarily in the market for an iMac, but if and when I am, I think I would hold out for the 27, just because it would be hard for me to go. I mean, I'm talking to you on an iMac 27. It would be uncomfortable for me to go back down to a 21 or 24, even a 24.
Totally. Yeah.
So I feel like that's something we got to wait on.
The tricky thing is that I am really in the market for a new desktop Mac. The MacBook Pro I'm sitting at right now is perfectly capable, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a 2018. But my desktop Mac to my right is a 2012 Mac Pro, and my desktop Mac at the office is a 2012 iMac, neither of which can be upgraded to Big Sur. So while I don't miss Big Sur, there are plenty of things about it that annoy me that I certainly don't miss it. I'm quite happy with Catalina, but I'm technically in the market. But I'm in the market for something that I feel is a good drop-in replacement for either of them. And if I'm going to get one of the M1s that's out there right now, I think it would be the Mac Mini. I think that's the one that I would get and forego the iMac as it stands right now. As beautiful as it is, it's an absolutely gorgeous machine. It's got an amazing screen. It's just as capable, if not more so, than that Mac Mini. But I feel like the Mac Mini is a better option as things stand right at the moment.
I would agree with that. I mean, being a Mac Mini user myself, I definitely see a big improvement in performance for sure. And that's value really gives you that. So,
the scary thing is, imagine that Mac Mini dropped in place of this Mac Pro. It would run circles around it.
Yeah.
Absolutely run circles around. In fact, I was daydreaming about it earlier today. That Mac Mini could sit behind my 24-inch display that I have on my desk, along with the dock that Chuck mentioned just a moment ago, with all that expansion capability and an external hard drive chassis, and absolutely blow the doors off this Mac Pro. That I will admit, I purchased used. I purchased it used for $1,000 to replace my 2006 Mac Pro. But, oh my gosh, it would just absolutely blow it away. And it would be an amazing substitute. But I'm still held up a little bit by that first generation-itis and wondering what's coming next. And would I regret the Mac Mini in too short a period of time if I purchased it right now?
I don't see how you could regret the Mac Mini if you purchased it right now, simply because of the price point and the value you get out of it. And even if you move that into a different role, Mike, if something else better does come along, or just sell it, and recoup some of your money, I would be hard pressed to believe that you would regret that. Because let's face it, it's the same old thing. We say this all the time, that there's always something better to be coming along. We already know that. It's a question of what do you need right now, and how much inconvenience are you suffering? If a real first world problem, but how much inconvenience are you suffering as a result of not moving forward?
And that's just it. I don't feel like I am suffering that much inconvenience. So that's where I'm I'm content to be where I am right now and see what's coming down the pipeline. But yeah, that's certainly the strongest contender in my mind right now. There's some amazing 27-inch iMacs at great price points right now, especially in Apple's refurbished store. But that's a tough sell too, because as much as Apple says we're going to, they're selling new Intel Macs right now. As much as they say they're going to support them for the near term, what does that near term translate to? And that was the question I had last fall. What is the life cycle of the Intel Mac? I would like Apple to give us just a glimpse. What do they anticipate the life cycle to be? Even if they don't commit to it, 2 years, 5 years, 4 years? What is that commitment, or what do they envision that commitment to be? Even if they, like I said, even if they don't commit to it, even if it's not written in stone, what do they envision their support for Intel working out to be? That is the one big question mark in my head. If I knew that if they pictured supporting the Intel Macs for another 4 years, I might take advantage of the great pricing of a 27-inch iMac that can run all the latest and compromise a little bit on performance or speed or, the benefits of the M1 for the short term being 4 years.
Yeah.
Hey, David,
Yes.
you want to help Mike spend some money?
Yeah.
What did you spy? What did you spy, Chuck?
On the refurbished Mac store, on Apple refurbished Mac store, refurbished Mac Mini Apple M1, 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, $589.
There you go.
That's a great price.
That is a really great price. So there you go. Buy that, and you've saved even more money, Mike.
You'll be happy.
And how much storage? 256?
Hold on. Sorry.
I'm sure it's 256.
Yeah.
Base.
256, yeah.
Same machine I have.
So there you go.
And with the Mac Mini, that's not a compromise because you have the external expansion.
Right.
Right.
And with SSDs dropping in price almost every day, that's not a compromise. It'd be slightly slower to get an external one that you can jack into the Thunderbolt port. He's slightly slower than the internal one, but I would argue it would be hard pressed for someone like me to tell the difference.
And compare that to what you were saying before about a refurbished 27-inch iMac. The one they're showing right now available is 3.3 gigahertz, 6-core Intel Core i5 for $1,699. Call it $1,700. So you can buy two of the others and not be to the price of this.
Yeah, the compelling argument with the iMac, though, has always been the gorgeous screen that Apple has coupled with it. When you try to purchase a 27-inch comparably featured screen from anybody else, that's the big differentiator that a lot of folks don't take into account when they look at an iMac versus a higher end workstation that's running Windows or Linux or some other operating system. And I'm talking about a high end workstation. There's some fantastic PCs out there, but when you want to couple it with a 27 or 30-inch screen that matches the specs of the iMac, you can often pay far more for that PC than you would pay for that iMac brand new, let alone refurbished.
No question. I mean, I kind of think that Mac Mini users have already decided that they're going to invest in a decent screen, or that they don't necessarily need a decent screen, and that they can get away with an okay screen and they're happy. Maybe their eyes aren't good enough to tell the difference, but that's always been the issue with headless Mac, that you have to invest in a screen. So to me, that's kind of out of the equation, unless you're just absolutely looking at an iMac versus a Mac Mini. And here, even so, I mean, I think you can find a very decent Dell monitor to go with this for not the equivalent of the price, and you would have that M1 with the bigger screen.
And to your point, Chuck, I am using a decent Dell monitor with my Mac Pro. when my Apple Cinema display gave up the ghost, I opted to go with the Dell monitor, and I have not regretted that decision.
Yeah, I mean a good 4K Dell monitor right now, I think is sub 400.
It is.
So
entry level, certainly.
Yeah. So, to your point, Mike, a lot of features, I mean, that would be just a bare bones, no USB ports, none of the fancy stuff. But, I don't want to pay for that in a monitor. I'm already paying for that in a computer or maybe in a dock. So that's my part of the equation.
A couple of things I'd like to add, if you don't mind, Mike.
Absolutely.
The iPad Pro, if you notice, they mentioned that you had the option of getting 8 gigs of RAM or 16 gigs of RAM. You get 8 gigs of RAM. It depends on your storage. So if you have 128, 256, or 512 gigabytes, you get 8 gigs of RAM. If you go with the 1 terabyte or the 2 terabytes of storage, you'll get 16 gigs of RAM. So they're obviously making a bit of a adjustment for having the larger storage, and that applies to both the 11 and the 12.9 inch models.
That is interesting.
I found that very interesting. And then noticeably, that wasn't mentioned, was iOS and iPadOS 14.5. As we have been talking here, they just announced that it's going to be released next week. And the release candidate was just released a few minutes ago on the beta site. So that means it's very near being released, as well as Mac OS Big Sur 11.3 release candidates out. So they're going to be releasing all of the software, tvOS, watchOS 7.4, and all the iOS and iPadOS and tvOS will be released. So we're ready to go here with the security. Privacy is going to be, we're going to be talking about even more. We'll all be talking about more as it gets finally released in the wild, and hearing everybody complain about the privacy stuff. So,
for as long as 14.5 has been in beta testing,
I know, the longest ever.
I anticipate a smooth rollout of this one.
It should be.
Yeah,
I can anticipate it. So those couple things that we're cooking over here as we were chatting here.
Yeah, interesting that they make the choice for you based on the storage, right. But that also makes the difference in the storage prices a little more palatable.
Yeah, because you're adding the enhanced RAM. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and as one of you pointed out, I think it was you, Chuck, during the presentation. This is really the first time Apple has made mention of the memory in an iPad ever, to my knowledge.
I mentioned that. Yep.
Yeah, Dave did. Dave saw that, and I saw it go by, but I was thinking too much. He claimed it first, but yeah, that is okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, we always expect Mr. In Touch with iOS to catch those iOS things first.
Absolutely. So, hey, for what it's worth, I will mention this too, because I'm just looking at ways of mitigating things. Get up to $580 in credit when you trade in your iPad.
Yep.
So you could do, that would help depending on which iPad, obviously.
Last I checked, mine I was going to get $455 unless it's changed since I checked the other day.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure mine's not going to give me that much, but.
Now, have either of you focused on that news that's come out the past week about folks sending in their devices, being promised a certain trade-in value and then being sent back with comments about there being white spots in the screen or whatever, and suddenly the value of the device plummets by 75%?
Yeah, actually, Mike, I found this very interesting simply because I recently went through and divested myself of a number of different pieces of older hardware through that program, and I absolutely had zero problems.
Same here.
Good. I heard that was the case, that what we're hearing may just be fringe cases, and, as so often happens, those fringe cases get the most press. But I didn't know that for sure. So it's interesting and great to hear that both of you had positive experiences. Now, I do understand that sometimes the difference is whether it's Apple giving you the quote or whether it's the third-party company giving you the quote. Do you know which it was in each of your cases?
For me, I went through the Apple site. So,
right.
I've so I felt like I was getting the trade-in quote. I better not say it that way. Apple was giving me the trade-in quote, but I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Phobio or something like that.
Phobio, yeah. I just pulled up the article about that. I was going to mention it here. So
okay, if that's the way you pronounce it. But yeah, I mean, they were the one that managed the whole process. And it was terrific. You know, they sent me the boxes, gave you specific instructions on what to do and what to send back and what not to send back. And then within probably a week, you know, it took, because the mail was a little slow, but within a week I had an email saying, yes, it's here, it's being inspected. And then 2 days later, yep, here's your gift card.
So if you've been thinking about doing the trade-in and there's been any hesitation at all on your part because you've heard these news stories, we have a couple positive experiences here from both Chuck and Dave, where everything went exactly as promised. So that's really, really good to hear. Yes. Really good to hear.
There was an article about Phobio having an alarming uptick in complaints. You know, I'll give you experience. A family member traded in an iPhone, and I guess we weren't sure that the camera was not working properly. And when we sent it in, they noticed that. So the price went from $120 was an iPhone 8 down to $30. So which is understandably, I guess the camera had stopped working. So in that case, it was a fair assessment. But they were seeing an uptick of things that, like you said, the 3 or 4 white spots were resulting in significantly lower trade-in value, and that had been happening. The Verge had also reported this too. So it's just something to keep in mind if you are trading it in, to be on alert. Even though you say there's nothing wrong with it, they may find something that there is something wrong with it. So
and remember too that you always have the choice to reject their estimate. If they come back and they tell you in retrospect, maybe it's not worth as much, you have the option to say, okay, great, send it back to me.
Yes, and no charge. They'll send it right back.
Yeah, which is awesome. And then we also have to keep in mind, and I did not see this mentioned in the articles at all, and then we'll end this topic, but one of you mentioned it, and I just wanted to kind of cover it briefly, that this is one of Apple's partners. Right. And Apple does not take its partnerships lightly. It never has. And if there's any kind of problem with a partner, you can bet that is going to be nipped in the bud sooner than later. So, if there is any issue, I've no doubt that it's going to be taken care of. And if it's not taken care of, Apple's going to find a new partner to work with. That's just how Apple rolls. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, especially since you're never losing the hardware. If they come back with an estimate that you're not happy with, you just tell them to send it back. And as Dave said, it's free. So
yes.
Well, anything else you guys wanted to talk about before we wrap things up here?
I'm good.
I have to go and do some math and check my credit card balance. How much of that Apple Cash have I been stacking up?
Well, I wanted to mention real quick, if anyone's been with us through this entire Reaction Time episode, that it's been a while since we've had a regular episode of For Mac Guys Only. But I did want to mention that in light of the fact that we're not going to be able to host MacStock again this summer, I've decided to do something a little bit different, and that's kind of turn the microphone around and put the focus on the folks who attend MacStock. So I'll be interviewing people who attend MacStock, talking to them about some of their interesting projects that they're undertaking with either Apple gear or software, or just interesting projects in general, and releasing those interviews as video interviews on the MacStock YouTube channel, but also releasing them as audio interviews here on For Mac Guys Only. So this is probably going to be, we've had a number of Reaction Time episodes in a row here. This is going to be the last Reaction Time episode, at least until June, and we'll be releasing some of these interviews with MacStock attendees, and also a couple For Mac Guys Only community members in the next few months. So keep an eye out for those in the MacStock feed and the For Mac Guys Only feed. If you want to see them in video, it's going to be on the MacStock YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/MacStock. And of course, you know where to find For Mac Guys Only. But with that said, that is going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters, so if you have any comments about the show, if you would like to share your thoughts on Apple's new hardware announcements today, or you would like to take part in these upcoming community interviews that I'll be doing and releasing here on the show, drop me a line, mike@formaccguysonly.com. And if you would like to share your feedback with Chuck or Dave or anyone else on Team For Mac Guys Only, Dave, where can people reach you?
You can find me at intouchwithios at intouchwithios.com. And I am also on Twitter at DaveG65. And thanks as always for having me, Mike.
Awesome. And Chuck, where can folks get a hold of you?
MacVoices.com is where you can find everything. I'm on the socials as @ChuckJoyner, and it's been a blast, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to both of you. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time.
My thanks to Mike Potter and Chuck Joyner and us having just an absolutely phenomenal time reacting to all the great things that were announced at the Spring Loaded Apple event here on April 20th. I'm super excited with the new iPads and the new AirTag and lots of other new things that are going to be coming out. So stay tuned for more great things we'll be talking about. We will have a show on Thursday with Chuck Joyner to do a recap of today's events. So with that, that's a wrap for this week. Or actually, that's a wrap for today. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter @intouchwithios, and you can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts and many others, but better yet, go to our website at intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter @DaveG65. I hope you enjoyed the show. I sure did, and I sure had a lot of fun reacting to all of the announcements, and we'll talk again soon.